Welcome to Alcott Stories channel, where love, resilience, and life's most heartfelt journeys are shared. Whether you're a new viewer or a loyal one returning, we're so glad you're here with us today. If you're new, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our family. We have so much more to explore together. For those of you who've been with us for a while, thank you for your continued support. You make this community truly special. Remember, this channel isn't just about stories, it's about creating a space where we can learn, grow, and inspire one another. So grab a seat, relax, and let's dive into today's story. If you love what you're watching, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of the heartwarming stories we share. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and let us know what part of today's story touched you the most. What's the most powerful act of love or sacrifice you've ever witnessed in your life? Share your story in the comments below. We can't wait to hear from you. Elena never expected her life to change the moment she stepped into the corporate office that day. As a receptionist, her job was simple: greet clients, direct calls, and keep the office running smoothly. She wasn't looking for love, especially not in a high-powered corporate world where emotions could be easily ignored, especially for a black woman like her. But then he walked in. Michael was everything she'd ever heard about: handsome, confident, and a powerful CEO who commanded respect just by entering the room. The first time their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, a spark that neither of them could ignore. His smile, though warm and inviting, felt like a magnetic force that pulled her into a space she had no intention of entering. But there it was, undeniable. For weeks their brief exchanges were professional, but the chemistry simmered just beneath the surface. Michael found himself drawn to her not only because of her outer beauty, but because of the way she carried herself, strong, poised, and intelligent. She was not intimidated by his title. Eleanor knew her worth, even in a world that often tried to diminish her. But what Michael didn't know was that Elena carried a heavy burden in her heart. Growing up, she had been told countless times that she was not enough because of the color of her skin. Society had never been kind to her, and love seemed a far-off dream. As much as she wanted to believe in the connection she felt with Michael, doubt always crept in. She had seen countless women in similar positions, black women in relationships with powerful white men, and knew the struggles they faced. But Michael was different. He treated her with respect and admiration. He didn't see her as a token, a prize to be won. He saw her as an equal. Michael, for his part, was fighting his own battles. The world he moved in, a world full of privilege, success, and wealth, had its rules. One of them was that his love life had to match his status, someone who looked the part. Elena didn't fit into the box that society expected. She wasn't what the world saw as the perfect match for him, but every time he looked into her eyes, he saw something more, something real and pure. Their relationship started with small, quiet moments. Michael would linger a little longer than necessary at the reception desk just to hear her laugh, the sound that seemed to lighten his heavy day. Elena, despite her hesitation, began to look forward to these moments too. Slowly, he worked his way into her heart, making her believe that maybe, just maybe, love could conquer all the things she had been taught to fear. It wasn't until one day, when he showed up with a bouquet of flowers in hand, that Elena allowed herself to believe. He wasn't there to flaunt his power or wealth. He was there to show her that she mattered. "I know you've heard it all before," he said softly, handing her the flowers. "But I needed to tell you that you're more than just my receptionist. You're the most important part of my day." Those words broke through the walls Elena had spent years building. She had spent so long protecting her heart from hurt that she had never allowed herself to truly believe someone could love her, not for what she did or how she looked, but for who she was. Her hands trembled as she accepted the flowers, and her heart raced. "You really mean that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, afraid to hope too much. "I do," Michael replied, his voice steady and sure. "I care about you, Eleanor, more than you know." For the first time in a long while, Eleanor allowed herself to hope. She wasn't just the receptionist anymore. She wasn't just the woman who had to fight for her place in this world. In Michael's eyes, she was everything. They began to date in secret at first. Elena was afraid of what others would think, but each moment with Michael made her realize that love was worth the risk. He took her to places she had never been, showed her parts of the world that she had only dreamed of. But no matter where they went, no matter how beautiful the surroundings, Michael always made her feel like she was the most important person in the room. Every time they were together, they both felt a sense of peace. But that peace was shattered when they began facing the harsh realities of being a couple in a world that wasn't ready to accept their love. There were whispered comments in the office, judgmental looks from people who thought they knew better. But Michael, ever the protector, refused to let it bother him. And slowly, Elena's doubts began to fade, replaced by a love that was stronger than the world's prejudice. One evening, as they walked through a park, Michael stopped and turned to her, his eyes filled with sincerity. "Elena," he said, his voice breaking the silence, "I don't care what the world thinks. I want you to be mine, forever. Will you marry me?" Elena stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. She never thought she would get a proposal like this. She never thought she would get a chance to be someone's everything. She looked into his eyes, and for the first time, she saw a future that was not defined by color, by status, or by society's rules. It was just the two of them. Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded, her voice barely audible. "Yes, Michael. Yes." In that moment, Eleanor realized that love, true love, wasn't bound by the limitations of the world. It wasn't about race or money or any of the things that people said mattered. It was about two souls finding each other and building a life together, no matter what anyone else thought. And for the first time in her life, Elena felt truly seen and loved. Elena's heart swells with a love that defies the odds. As she accepts Michael's proposal, she realizes that love is not just a dream. It's real and it's all hers. Her tears are not of sorrow but of joy as she steps into a future where her love story is finally written on her own terms. Months had passed since Michael and Elena had begun their secret romance, and with each passing day, their love grew deeper, more intense. Michael, despite the weight of his high-powered career, never failed to make Elena feel like she was the center of his world. He called her his sunshine, his reason for waking up each day with hope in his heart. For Elena, Michael was everything she had ever dreamed of, but he was also the one person who made her question everything she had ever believed about love. Growing up, Elena had been told time and time again that she wasn't enough. She wasn't beautiful enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. Her skin, her heritage, her very existence was often reduced to something to be tolerated, not embraced. Society told her she was an afterthought, a second choice, but with Michael, none of that mattered. He saw her for who she was, strong, beautiful, intelligent, and deserving of every good thing the world had to offer. But despite all of Michael's love and reassurances, Elena couldn't shake the nagging doubt in her heart. Could their love really survive the judgment of a world that refused to accept them? Could their bond withstand the prejudice that would inevitably follow them, the cruel whispers from people who didn't believe a couple like them could work? The weight of those questions often lingered in the quiet moments they shared. Elena found herself looking into Michael's eyes, filled with so much love and hope, and yet a shadow of uncertainty crept in. The world outside of their little bubble seemed so cold, so harsh. She had seen enough to know that the road they were on wouldn't be easy. Their love would be scrutinized, judged, and questioned by many. But with each touch, each word of comfort Michael gave her, Elena found the strength to push those fears aside, to let herself believe that maybe love could conquer all. One crisp autumn evening, as the last golden rays of sunlight bathed the city in a soft glow, Michael took Elena by the hand and led her through a secluded garden in the heart of the city. They had spent countless moments here together, wandering the lush paths and sitting on the bench by the fountain, talking about their hopes, their dreams, and their future. But tonight, the air was different. Tonight, something momentous was about to happen. Elena could feel her heart racing as Michael gently guided her to the center of the garden, his eyes filled with emotion. The soft rustle of the leaves above them seemed to hush the world, creating a private oasis just for the two of them. Michael stopped in front of her, his hands trembling ever so slightly, as if he were about to take a leap into the unknown. "Elena," he began, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity, "from the very first moment I saw you, I knew there was something special about you. You've become my everything, my heart, my soul, my reason for believing in something more than just success and ambition. I don't care about the world's opinions. I don't care about the whispers or the judgments. All I care about is you." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she looked at him, her heart swelling with love. She had always believed that the world would never understand their love, but here Michael was, standing before her, offering her something more precious than any material possession, his heart, completely and fully. "I don't need the world's approval, Elena," he continued, his voice steady and full of resolve. "I don't need anyone's permission. What I need is you, for the rest of my life. I need you to be my wife, to stand by me through everything, to face the world together. You're my soulmate, and I can't imagine a future without you. Will you marry me?" Elena's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding in her chest. The words she had longed to hear, the words that had seemed like an impossible dream, were right in front of her. Michael was asking her to spend forever with him. But with those words came the weight of everything they would face. She thought about the judgment they would endure, the harsh stares, the whispers that would follow them every step of the way. She thought about the expectations placed on them by a world that didn't understand their love, a world that would never fully accept them. A part of Elena wanted to hesitate, to step back and protect herself from the pain she knew they would face. But the deeper part of her, the part that had grown so deeply in love with Michael, knew that she couldn't let fear dictate her life. She had spent so many years running from the love she deserved, afraid to believe that someone like Michael could love her. But in this moment, she knew that their love was worth every battle, every hardship they would encounter. Tears streamed down Elena's face as she reached out to Michael, her heart filled with a love so pure it nearly overwhelmed her. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Michael, I'll marry you." As Michael slipped the ring onto her finger, a symbol of the bond they shared, he kissed her gently, his lips warm and full of promise. For a moment, the world faded away. There was no judgment, no prejudice, no skepticism. It was just the two of them, their hearts intertwined in a love that defied all odds. But as they pulled apart, Eleanor couldn't ignore the knot of uncertainty in her stomach. She had agreed to marry Michael, yes. But would the world ever accept their love? Would they ever be free to live their lives without the weight of judgment? Would their love survive the challenges they would inevitably face? Her heart was full, but the shadow of doubt lingered in the back of her mind. No matter how much Michael reassured her, no matter how much he swore that he would always stand by her, Elena couldn't shake the fear that one day the world would tear them apart. She had seen it happen to other couples before, their love suffocated by the harsh realities of a prejudiced world. But then Michael, sensing her hesitation, cupped her face gently in his hands and whispered, "I know the world won't always be kind to us, Elena, but no matter what, we will face it together. We are meant to be. Our love knows no boundaries." And in that moment, Elena realized that no matter the obstacles, no matter the doubts that lingered, she had found her home in Michael's heart. Together, they would face whatever came their way. They had already won the greatest battle, the battle to love, freely and without hesitation, and nothing could take that away from them. Eleanor's heart swells with the intensity of their love, but the lingering shadow of doubt reminds her of the challenges ahead. Yet, in Michael's arms, she finds the strength to believe that their love, pure and unyielding, will survive. Even if the world never fully accepts them, they have each other, and that, for now, is enough. The morning sun was soft as it filtered through the curtains, casting a warm golden glow across the room. Michael and Elena had just moved into their dream home, a place they had built together, full of love and hope for the future. Their lives had finally fallen into place. The world felt like a beautiful place to be, as though every day was a celebration of their love. They had everything: love, success, and a promise of forever. But one phone call shattered their happiness, tearing apart the life they had just begun to build. It came late one evening, a phone call from Michael's doctor. Elena was sitting beside Michael on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder as they relaxed after a long day. She noticed the change in his expression as he listened to the doctor's voice on the other end of the line. His face drained of color, and Elena immediately knew that something was terribly wrong. "I'll be right there," Michael said, his voice shaky. He hung up the phone, his hands trembling as he turned to Elena. "Elena, they've found something serious. I need to go to the hospital now." Elena's heart dropped into her stomach, a feeling of dread creeping up her spine. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice quivering. Michael's eyes filled with fear, and for the first time since they had been together, Elena saw him as vulnerable as he had ever been. "It's my kidneys, Elena. They're failing. The doctor says I need a transplant. If I don't get one soon, I don't know what's going to happen." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't comprehend the words, couldn't process the weight of what he was saying. Michael, the man who had been her rock, the one who'd stood by her through every storm, was now facing a battle she couldn't fight for him. It felt as if the earth had shifted beneath her feet, throwing everything she knew into chaos. "What?" Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "How did this happen?" "I don't know," Michael replied, his voice filled with helplessness. "They say it's been happening for a while, but it only became noticeable now. I don't know what to do." Elena's mind spun as she tried to process what was happening. How could this be real? How could the man she loved, the man who had everything, wealth, power, success, be facing something so beyond his control? They rushed to the hospital, where the doctors confirmed the worst. Michael's kidneys were deteriorating rapidly, and without a transplant, his health would continue to decline. The doctors explained the urgency of the situation, warning that time was running out. Michael's wealth, his family's contacts, and all his influence couldn't change one simple fact. He needed a kidney from someone who matched his tissue, someone who was willing to give him the life-saving gift. The doctors assured them they would try everything they could, but Michael was too ill to wait much longer. Every hour that passed, his condition worsened. Elena's heart shattered with each word the doctors spoke, her fear growing with every passing minute. Days turned into weeks, and despite their best efforts, no one could be found to donate a kidney. Michael's family, his friends, his business associates, all turned him down. The reasons were varied. Concerns about the risks, personal matters, or just the simple unwillingness to help. Michael, who had spent his life helping others, who had built an empire, found himself in a place he never thought he would be, begging for someone to save him. But no one stepped forward. Elena was beside herself with worry. She tried everything she could think of, reaching out to distant relatives, calling every doctor, every transplant specialist, searching for any possible match. But no one was willing to help. The weight of this overwhelming reality pressed down on her chest, and she found herself gasping for air, feeling helpless and lost. She had been through so much in her life, but nothing had ever felt as terrifying as watching the man she loved slowly fade away. She spent sleepless nights sitting by Michael's side in the hospital, holding his hand, praying for a miracle. Every day, his health worsened. His face became pale, his body grew weaker, and the vibrant energy that once defined him seemed to drain with each passing day. Elena felt as if she were losing him piece by piece, as if the love of her life was slipping through her fingers, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Michael," Elena whispered one night as she stroked his hair, her voice full of fear and sadness. "Please, don't leave me. I don't know what I would do without you. I love you so much." Michael's eyes flickered open, his face pale but still holding a trace of that comforting smile she had fallen in love with. He weakly squeezed her hand. "I love you too, Elena," he said softly, his voice hoarse. "But I don't know if I can do this. I'm so tired." The tears that had been welling in Elena's eyes finally spilled over, and she cried. Cried for the future that seemed to be slipping away, cried for the man who had brought so much light into her life. She didn't know how much longer she could bear to watch him suffer, to feel him slip further away with every passing hour. "I won't let you go," Elena promised, her voice broken with emotion. "I will find a way. I will find someone. I will save you." But deep down, Elena knew that time was running out. The world that had seemed so beautiful just months ago now felt like a cold, unforgiving place. And in the silence of the hospital room, Elena was left with the overwhelming fear that she might lose Michael, that the love of her life might be taken away from her, and there would be nothing she could do to stop it. Elena's heart is shattered by the helplessness she feels as she watches Michael slowly deteriorate. Fear grips her chest as she realizes that the man she loves, the man who had given her everything, is now slipping away before her eyes. Her heart aches with the knowledge that no matter how much she loves him, there is nothing she can do to save him. The world feels dark and cold, and Elena's desperation to save Michael becomes an all-consuming fire that she can't escape. She is overwhelmed with fear and helplessness, but her love for him is the one thing that keeps her fighting. Elena couldn't breathe. Each breath felt like it was being ripped from her chest as she sat in the sterile hospital room, holding Michael's weakened hand. The machines around him beeped steadily, but they didn't reassure her. The rhythm of his heartbeat, though steady for now, felt like a ticking clock, a reminder that time was running out. She had been living in a nightmare for what felt like weeks, but it was more than just the terror of losing Michael. It was the isolation that came with watching him fade away, unable to do anything to help him. She had tried everything, begging hospitals, scouring the lists of potential donors, reaching out to distant relatives and making calls to people she had hoped would be able to save him. But nothing worked. Her mind, exhausted and overwhelmed, kept returning to one thought. Michael's only chance of survival lay with his closest friends. She couldn't give up on him, not when there was still a glimmer of hope. That's when she thought of Tom. Tom had been Michael's best friend for years. The two of them had shared countless memories, built businesses together, and always had each other's backs. If anyone would be willing to help Michael, it would be Tom. Elena had always trusted him, admired the way he treated Michael like a brother. She had always thought of him as someone who truly cared for them both. She picked up the phone, trembling as she dialed Tom's number, her mind a whirl of emotions. She felt guilty for putting him in this position, for asking him to make a choice that would impact his life so dramatically, but she knew she had no other option. She needed to save Michael, and this was the only way. When Tom answered, his voice was strained, but it was still full of warmth. "Elena, is everything okay?" "No, Tom. Everything is not okay." Elena's voice broke, and she wiped away a tear that had slipped down her cheek. "Michael, he's dying, and the only thing that can save him is a kidney transplant. The doctor said he doesn't have much time left, and I've tried everything, but no one will help. No one's willing to donate. I don't know what to do, Tom. You're his closest friend, his brother. You're his only chance." The line was silent for a moment, and Elena's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for Tom's response. When he finally spoke, his tone was heavy, but filled with compassion. "Elena, I can't even begin to imagine how hard this must be for you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I wish I could just give him my kidney without hesitation. But I need to think about it. It's not a small thing, it's life-changing. Let me think." The conversation ended there, with Tom promising to think it over, to give Elena an answer in a few days. But when Tom called her back later that evening, Elena thought her heart might stop when she heard his voice. "Elena, I've thought about it," he said, and for a moment Elena dared to hope. "I can donate my kidney. I want to help Michael. I'm willing to do it. But I have one condition." A chill ran through Elena's body. She could hear the weight of those words hanging in the air. The word condition felt like a knife in her chest. "What condition?" she asked, her voice trembling as she tried to keep the panic from seeping into her tone. Tom's silence stretched out like an eternity, and when he finally spoke again, his words were cold and calculating. "You need to spend one night with me in a hotel room. You do that, and I'll give Michael my kidney." Elena's blood turned to ice. Her stomach churned with disbelief. Tom's words felt like a punch to the gut, and for a moment she could barely process what he had just said. The man she had trusted, the man who had always been there for them, was asking her for something unspeakable. He was willing to save Michael's life, but only if she sacrificed her dignity, her love, and everything she had ever stood for. Tears flooded Elena's eyes as she fought to control her emotions. "What?" she whispered, barely able to speak through the lump in her throat. "What did you just say?" "I'm not saying it's right, Elena." Tom's voice was distant, almost detached. "But I'm saying that it's the price. If you want me to help Michael, this is the only way." Elena felt like the world was collapsing around her. Every inch of her body screamed in protest. She couldn't do this. She couldn't betray Michael. She couldn't let Tom use her in this way. The man she loved was dying, and she couldn't allow herself to sink into this cruel, disgusting bargain. "How dare you?" Elena's voice shook with fury and disbelief. "How dare you try to manipulate me like this? I thought you were Michael's friend. I thought you cared about us. You think I'll throw away everything, my love, my trust, just to save him? You're asking me to sacrifice my soul, Tom. No amount of guilt or desperation will make me do that." The words hung in the air, and for a long moment there was nothing but silence. Eleanor's heart was racing, her body trembling with emotion. She wanted to hang up the phone, to scream at him for even thinking that this was acceptable. But she couldn't. Michael's life was at stake, and as much as it repulsed her, she was still desperate, desperate enough to consider that awful price. "I'm not doing it, Tom," Elena said, her voice full of finality. "I love Michael and I will save him, but not like this. You should be ashamed of yourself." Tom's voice became softer, almost regretful. "I'm sorry, Elena. I didn't mean to hurt you. But I'm giving you a choice. It's the only one I can offer. I don't want your help if it comes with that condition." "I won't accept it," Eleanor snapped. "I'll find another way. I will save him." The conversation ended there. and Elena collapsed onto the couch, her body racked with sobs. She had just been faced with an unimaginable choice, and in that moment she realized how truly dark and ugly the world could be. But no matter what, she couldn't betray Michael, not for anything. In that moment, Elena's love for Michael surged stronger than ever, her resolve hardening like iron. She would do whatever it took to save him, but her dignity and her heart would remain intact. She would find another way. Elena is horrified and devastated by Tom's cruel demand. Her heart shatters as she realizes that the man she had once trusted is now offering her the most impossible and degrading bargain. The love of her life is dying, but Elena cannot sacrifice her dignity, her soul, or the trust she has in the bond she shares with Michael. This moment is one of pure agony for Elena, as she is torn between the desperation to save her husband and the overwhelming need to protect herself from the unimaginable cruelty of Tom's condition. The weight of this emotional devastation is unbearable, but her love for Michael becomes the anchor that holds her steady, even in the storm. Elena sat alone in the sterile waiting room of the hospital, the hum of the fluorescent lights above her drowning out everything else. The silence was suffocating, pressing against her chest as she stared at her phone, the screen flickering with the name Tom glowing in front of her. Her fingers trembled as if they were betraying her with every hesitant movement. She had just walked out of Michael's room, his once strong form now a frail shell of the man she had married. His skin had lost its color, his eyes were sunken, and his breathing was shallow. The doctors had warned her. Time was running out. "Elena," the doctor had said, his voice grim, "if we don't get a kidney soon, there's nothing more we can do. He won't survive much longer. Please, do whatever you can to find a donor. You need to act now." She had pleaded, bargained, cried, but all those efforts had led her to one painful truth. Michael's survival rested in the hands of someone who could give him a kidney, and the only one who had stepped forward, who had agreed to help, was Tom, the same man who had twisted her love and desperation into a cruel demand. Her heart shattered as she thought about what she was about to do. Elena closed her eyes and pressed her hands against her face, trying to hold back the flood of tears that threatened to drown her. Every inch of her being screamed in protest. She couldn't sacrifice herself like this. Her love for Michael was boundless, yes, but this was more than she could bear. To trade one moment of intimacy for Michael's life, to betray herself, her dignity, and her soul. She had never imagined that love could push her to such a point. And yet, here she was. But she had no other choice. The world seemed like a cruel, cold place, and her heart felt like it was being ripped apart by the weight of the decision she was about to make. With trembling fingers, she dialed Tom's number again. Her throat closed as the phone rang, each ring a countdown to the moment that would change everything. She could feel her heart pounding in her ears, each beat reminding her of the life she would lose in order to save Michael's. Tom answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, detached, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "Elena," he said simply, almost as if he knew what was coming. "Have you made up your mind?" Elena swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said, her words choking her. "I'll do it. I'll spend the night with you." There was a brief pause, and Elena's heart cracked even further as she imagined the satisfaction in Tom's voice. "Good," he replied. "We'll arrange everything. I'll meet you in an hour." Elena's hand shook as she ended the call. The phone slipped from her fingers, landing with a soft thud on the chair beside her. She stared ahead, unseeing, her mind a swirl of emotions. How had she gotten here? How had the love of her life, someone who had given her everything, reduced her to this? It felt as though the weight of the world had collapsed upon her shoulders. Tears streamed down her face as the gravity of what she was about to do settled in. She had promised Michael that she would never let him go, that she would fight for him until her last breath. But now she was preparing to compromise everything she had ever believed in, to sacrifice her values and herself for his survival. How had love come to this? The person she loved most in the world, the man who had promised to always protect her, was now unknowingly pushing her into a situation where she had to make this heartbreaking choice. The hospital walls felt like they were closing in around her as she stood up, wiping away her tears. She could barely see through the haze of emotions, her heart feeling as if it were breaking into 1,000 pieces with every step she took toward the exit. Michael was waiting for her. But the truth was, no matter how much she loved him, she could never be the same again after this. She had given everything for him, and now she would have to give even more. She didn't want to go, didn't want to face the reality of what Tom had asked, but she knew what would happen if she didn't. She stepped into the cold, unforgiving night, her mind a storm of confusion, despair, and hopelessness. The drive to the hotel felt like it lasted an eternity, the world outside slipping by in a blur as her thoughts consumed her. She was walking down a path she never wanted to walk, one that would forever alter the course of her life and her relationship with Michael. When she arrived at the hotel, she stood frozen at the entrance, staring at the large glass doors as if they could somehow give her a way out. But there was no escape. She had already made the choice. She had already agreed. Tom was already waiting inside, leaning against the counter, a smirk playing on his lips as he saw Elena enter. His eyes scanned her face, assessing her as if she were a puzzle that had finally been solved. Elena forced herself to look away, trying to block out the unease that crawled under her skin. The whole situation felt wrong, so fundamentally wrong that she couldn't stop herself from feeling like she was losing a part of herself with every step she took. She didn't speak as she followed Tom to the room. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, suffocating her with guilt, shame, and sorrow. She was doing this for Michael, but at what cost? Would he ever be able to look at her the same way again? Would he even want to once he knew the price she had paid? Inside the room, Eleanor felt trapped, her world crashing down around her. Her thoughts were a jumbled mess of love and guilt, of desperate hope and overwhelming regret. She had just sacrificed everything she believed in for Michael's life. And in that moment, she didn't know if she could ever forgive herself. Eleanor's heart is shattered as she prepares to sacrifice her values for the man she loves. She feels lost, betrayed by the world, yet driven by a fierce love for Michael that pulls her forward despite the overwhelming weight of what she's about to do. The world feels like a cold, cruel place, and she can hardly recognize herself in the reflection of the choices she's forced to make. Torn between her integrity and her love for Michael, she is left to navigate a journey of unbearable pain, guilt, and regret. She cannot undo what has been set in motion, but her love for Michael is the only thing that pushes her forward through this devastating, heart-wrenching decision. The door clicked shut behind Elena, the sound echoing through the empty, sterile hotel room. The air felt thick with tension as she stepped further into the room, her heart heavy with dread. She could feel her knees tremble beneath her as the weight of the night ahead pressed down on her like a physical burden. Every step she took seemed to pull her further away from the person she once was, and closer to a moment of reckoning she never could have imagined. Tom was already seated on the edge of the bed, his gaze heavy, expectant. His eyes followed her as she stood frozen by the door, and for a brief moment she wondered if he could see the battle raging inside her. He hadn't said anything yet, but she could feel his silent judgment, the unspoken terms of this grim arrangement, hanging between them like a dark cloud. "I've never seen you like this before," Tom said finally, his voice smooth but with a cruel edge. But I understand, Eleanor. I know what you're doing here. You're desperate. You'd do anything to save him. Her throat tightened at the words, and her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Every fibre of her being screamed to leave, to run away from this nightmare that had become her reality. But she couldn't. Michael's life depended on her. She couldn't let him down, even if it meant losing herself in the process. She swallowed, trying to steady her breath, but her hands trembled uncontrollably. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, and she could taste the bitter salt of them on her lips. She had never imagined this moment, had never thought it would come to this. She had loved Michael with everything she had, but now it felt as though she was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into a chasm of despair. "Please, Tom," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm here for one reason. I need you to save Michael's life. That's it. I'm doing this for him." Her words felt like a confession, the truth of her actions spilling out into the quiet room. Every syllable felt like it cut deeper into her soul, but she needed him to understand. She needed him to know that she wasn't here for him. She wasn't here to be with him. She was here for Michael. Only for Michael. Tom stood up slowly, his movements deliberate, almost predatory. He crossed the room towards her, his presence suffocating. Eleanor took a step back, her breath coming faster, her heart racing in her chest. She could feel the fear building inside her, the panic rising in her throat, as Tom's eyes locked onto hers with an unsettling intensity. "Elena," he murmured, his voice low and coaxing. "You know what the deal is. You can't back out now. You agreed to it. You can't change your mind." His hand reached out toward her, fingers curling in the air as if to claim her. "I'll save him. I'll give him my kidney, but you need to fulfill your part of the bargain." Eleanor flinched, her body trembling with the weight of his words, with the unbearable pressure of the situation. She wanted to scream, to run, to escape this nightmare that was closing in on her. But she couldn't. She couldn't abandon Michael now, not when there was still a chance to save him. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself, even as her heart threatened to shatter with each passing second. "No," she said, her voice trembling but firm. She didn't even recognize the strength in her words, but somehow it was there. "No, Tom, I'm not here for you. I won't be with you. I'll never be with you. I'm here to save my husband. You have no right to ask this of me." Tom paused for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he took a step closer to her. But Elena didn't move. She stood her ground, her body trembling with fear and anxiety, but her resolve remained steadfast. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they weren't tears of surrender. They were tears of anguish, of love, and of pain. She was terrified, but she wasn't going to let him break her. She wasn't going to let him take what was left of her dignity. "I'll never let you win, Tom," Eleanor continued, her voice rising in strength. "I will do whatever it takes to save Michael, but I will never let you control me. I love him too much to betray him like this. You think you can manipulate me, but you're wrong. I will not sacrifice my heart, my soul for you. I won't let you turn this into something it's not." Her words were like a prayer, a vow she made not just to Michael, but to herself. The tears that filled her eyes were not just from the pain of this moment. They were a testament to the love that ran deeper than anything else, a love that could never be twisted, a love that could never be bought or sold. Tom's face faltered, and for the first time, Elena saw a flicker of guilt cross his features, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He stepped back, his expression hardening again. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice colder now. "You don't understand what you're doing. This is your husband's life. Don't let your pride get in the way of saving him." But Eleanor didn't flinch. She didn't move an inch. She stood there, resolute, her heart beating fiercely with the knowledge that she was doing the right thing, no matter the cost. She couldn't let him touch her, couldn't let him win. She would never let herself become something she was not for anyone. "I'm not doing this for you," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper, but every word carrying the weight of her unwavering love for Michael. "I'm here for him, and I will fight for him with every part of me. But you won't break me. Not tonight. Not ever." Tom didn't speak for a long moment, and Elena thought she saw something like regret in his eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Finally, Tom nodded. "I'll donate the kidney. But you're right. You never were mine to control. You love him. I see that now." Elena's heart shattered all over again, but this time it was a different kind of pain. It wasn't the betrayal of herself. It was the realization that in this dark moment she had kept her integrity intact. She had kept her love for Michael pure, despite everything that had happened. And as painful as it was, she knew that she had done the right thing. As she left the hotel room, her heart was still heavy, still aching, but it was filled with the strength of a woman who had refused to be broken. Her tears fell freely now, not from fear or shame, but from the exhaustion of fighting so hard to protect the love of her life. Elena's strength and love for Michael shine through, even in the face of humiliation. Her tears represent not just her pain and fear, but also her determination to protect her marriage, her integrity, and her heart. The night is filled with sorrow, but also with the quiet realization that, even in the darkest moments, love and strength can guide us through the most unbearable of trials. Elena's journey of self-respect and undying love for Michael is a testament to her courage, her inner power, and her unwavering commitment to protect what matters most. The silence in the hotel room hung thick, suffocating, as Tom watched Elena stand there, defiant, tear-streaked and resolute. Her words, filled with unwavering love for Michael, had struck him like a slap to the face. For the first time he saw her not as a woman to be manipulated, but as someone far stronger than he had ever given her credit for. He had underestimated her. Worse, he had underestimated the love she shared with her husband, the kind of love that could not be bargained with, twisted, or broken. It was a love that had been tested by fire, and here, in this room, it was burning brighter than ever before. Tom had thought he could control this situation. He had assumed that Elena, desperate to save Michael, would bow to his terms. He had been wrong, so wrong. The power she had over him in that moment, the quiet strength in her eyes, humbled him in a way he hadn't expected. She wasn't just trying to save her husband, she was trying to protect herself, her dignity, her integrity, and all of it for the man she loved. That love, that fierce devotion, was something Tom could never have imagined, and it made him sick to think of how he had tried to taint it. As Elena had stood her ground, refusing to let him take what was hers, something inside Tom began to shift. His bravado, his sense of entitlement, slowly faded as he recognized the cruelty of his actions. The selfishness he had shown, the manipulation, the demand he had made, it all felt so small now, so meaningless compared to the vastness of the love Elena and Michael shared. He had wanted to bend her to his will, but in doing so, he had lost something far more important, his own sense of humanity. As Elena had left the room, her heart still intact, a wave of guilt surged within him, overwhelming and suffocating. He sank down onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. How had he become this person? The man who would ask for such a thing, the man who would reduce Elena to this kind of pain for his own selfish desires. He had been consumed by his own need for control, but in doing so, he had destroyed the very thing that had made him human, the ability to love with honor, with respect. Tom's regret was a heavy, almost unbearable weight on his chest. He had made a choice that no one deserved to be subjected to, let alone Eleanor, someone who had shown him nothing but kindness and warmth. She had trusted him, at least to some degree, and he had betrayed that trust with his crude, heartless demands. The cruelty of his actions was undeniable, and the truth of it was becoming clearer with every passing second. As he thought about Elena, her tear-streaked face, the way her voice had wavered with determination as she refused his advances, a deep sense of shame flooded him. His actions had nearly shattered her. And for what? To save a man's life? To play the hero? But no hero acted this way. No true friend would have put someone in the kind of position he had put Elena in. He had tried to make her believe that she had no other choice, that this was the only way. But the truth was, she had a choice, and she had chosen love. Love for Michael, love for herself. The weight of it all finally broke through the walls he had built around himself. Tom stood up and paced around the room, his hands clenched into fists as if he could fight away the guilt that was now gnawing at him. The guilt was suffocating, and it felt as though he could hardly breathe. There was no going back from this, no way to undo the hurt he had caused. He couldn't take back his words, his demands. But there was one thing he could still do, one final act that might begin to right the wrongs he had committed. He owed it to Elena, to Michael, to make amends, no matter how difficult it was. With trembling hands, Tom pulled out his phone and dialed Elena's number. The screen flashed with her name, but Tom hesitated for a moment, unsure of what he could possibly say to make things right. How could he apologize for what he had done? What words could he use to convey the depth of his regret? The phone rang once, twice, before Eleanor's voice answered on the other end, still laced with the rawness of the night's events. "Elena," Tom said softly, his voice filled with sincerity and guilt. I'm sorry. I don't even know how to begin, but I need you to hear me out." There was a long pause on the other end, and Tom could practically hear the walls she had built around herself, the walls that were there to protect her from him. He had hurt her deeply, and he knew it. But he had to say this. He had to make things right. "I was wrong," Tom continued, his voice trembling with regret. "I was selfish and cruel. I took advantage of your desperation, and I manipulated you into agreeing to something horrible. I am so sorry for what I did to you." He swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check as he spoke, his heart aching with the weight of the apology. "Elena, you didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it. I see now how much I've hurt you, and I'm ashamed of myself. You're a strong, beautiful woman, and I have nothing but respect for you. I promise you I won't touch you again. I won't ask for anything in return. I'll donate the kidney, but it's only because it's the right thing to do, not because of anything I expect from you. I'll do it for Michael. I'll do it for you." Tom's voice cracked at the end, and for the first time in a long while, he felt small, truly small before her. He had wanted control, and now he was surrendering it completely, offering her his apology with nothing but humility and regret. There was another long pause, and Tom held his breath, waiting for Elena's response. He didn't know if she would forgive him. He didn't know if she could ever see him the same way again. But what mattered now was that he had finally recognized the value of love, of honesty, and of respect. It wasn't something to be bargained with. It was something to be cherished. "Elena." Tom's voice broke through the silence, his heart heavy with the hope that she would hear him. "I am so sorry." And in that moment, Tom realized something profound. Love was not about possession or manipulation. It was about sacrifice, respect, and honor. And through his regret, he was beginning to understand what that truly meant. Tom's deep regret is felt as he acknowledges the magnitude of his wrongdoings. Elena's emotional strength has been the catalyst for his reflection, causing him to see his actions in a new light. His apology is a raw, vulnerable moment, where he finally comes to understand that love is not something to be controlled or used, but something that must be respected and protected. Through his regret, Tom learns the true value of love, honesty, and respect, and it is a lesson that will stay with him for the rest of his life. The sound of beeping monitors, the hum of hospital equipment, and the soft rustle of sheets filled the sterile room where Michael lay recovering from his surgery. The kidney transplant had been a success, and slowly, with every passing day, Michael's strength returned. But it wasn't just his physical health that was healing. His heart, his soul, and his entire perception of love were being reshaped in a way he never anticipated. Tom's decision to donate his kidney had been nothing short of a miracle. Michael owed his life to the man who had once caused so much turmoil in his marriage, and though the emotional fallout of Tom's actions still lingered, Michael knew that he owed him a debt of gratitude that could never truly be repaid. But as Michael lay there in the hospital bed, the weight of his own recovery felt insignificant compared to the realization of just how much Elena had sacrificed for him. Elena had been his rock. From the moment Michael was diagnosed with kidney failure, Elena's world had shifted into a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and gut-wrenching decisions. She had stood by him through every test, every moment of uncertainty. She had been the one to approach Tom, to make the gut-wrenching decision to endure that humiliating, painful night at the hotel, all in the name of saving the man she loved. She had borne a burden that no one should ever have to bear, and yet, without hesitation, she had done it, because of the depth of her love. Michael couldn't even begin to fathom the emotional toll Elena had endured. He couldn't imagine the tears she must have shed in private, the sleepless nights spent wondering if she was doing the right thing, the way her heart must have broken to see her husband so vulnerable, and yet be forced to go through such an agonizing ordeal. He felt a sharp pang of guilt, but alongside that guilt, he felt something far stronger, an overwhelming wave of gratitude. With each passing day of recovery, Michael came to a realization that shook him to his core. Elena had given up so much for him, for their love. She had put herself in a position of unimaginable distress to save his life, to ensure that he had the chance to continue living. The weight of that sacrifice was not lost on him, and as he slowly regained his strength, he found himself struggling to find the words that could adequately express the depth of his appreciation. One evening, as the setting sun bathed the hospital room in a soft golden light, Michael turned to Elena, who had been sitting quietly at his side, reading a book. She had barely left his side since the surgery. She had insisted on being there for every moment of his recovery, and Michael could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the tiredness etched into the lines of her face. But beneath it all, there was something more, a quiet strength, a kind of resilience that took his breath away. "Eleanor," Michael said softly, his voice hoarse but filled with emotion. Her name came out with such reverence, as if it were a prayer, a symbol of everything he held dear in this world. She looked up at him, her eyes tired but still filled with love, her smile gentle as she put down the book. "I don't think I can ever truly express how much I owe you," Michael continued, his voice trembling slightly. "What you've done for me, for us. He broke off for a moment, as though the weight of his words couldn't fully capture what he was feeling, but he pressed on, his heart in his throat. "Elena, you've saved my life. I was slipping away, and you did whatever it took to bring me back. I can't fathom how you did it, how you endured so much for me. You gave up your peace, your comfort, your very dignity, all to save me. I owe you everything." Elena blinked back tears, trying to hold herself together, but her heart was so full in that moment. She had never wanted praise for what she had done. She had done it because she loved him, because she couldn't bear the thought of losing him. But hearing him say those words, seeing the deep gratitude in his eyes, made everything worth it. She had endured the darkest, most painful moment of her life, and now, sitting beside him, knowing that he was healing, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "I did it because I love you," Eleanor whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Because I couldn't imagine a life without you. You are my everything, Michael. I would do it all again if it meant you would be here with me. I couldn't lose you." Her words hit Michael like a tidal wave, overwhelming him with emotion. He felt a lump rise in his throat, and for a moment he was rendered speechless. What could he possibly say to express the magnitude of his gratitude, to explain how much her love meant to him? Instead, he reached out and took her hand in his, the simple act of holding her hand conveying everything he couldn't say. He squeezed her hand tightly, as though afraid that if he let go, the moment would slip away. Their eyes locked, and in that shared silence, they communicated everything that needed to be said. Elena had saved him, not just physically, but emotionally. She had been the steady presence he had needed through every trial, every challenge. She had given him life, not only by ensuring his survival, but by reminding him of what truly mattered in life: love, loyalty, sacrifice, and the strength to endure anything for the person you cherish. "I don't deserve you," Michael whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you. I promise, Elena, I'll spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know how much you mean to me." Elena smiled through her tears, a smile full of love and gratitude. She had always believed in the power of their love, but now, in this moment, as she looked at Michael, alive, strong, and with a heart full of love for her, she knew that their bond was unbreakable. They had weathered the storm, faced the darkest moments, and come out the other side stronger than ever. The days ahead would not be easy. Michael still had a long road to recovery, but Elena knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Together, they had fought through the impossible, and now they would walk through life side by side, forever bonded by the love that had saved them both. Michael's gratitude for Elena's sacrifice and devotion deepens with every passing day. Elena, though weary from the struggles she has faced, finds peace in knowing her love has brought Michael back to life. Together, they share a moment of deep connection, reaffirming their commitment to each other, knowing that no matter what life brings, their love will carry them through. 3 months had passed since Michael's successful kidney transplant, and life seemed to be slowly returning to normal. His health was improving with each passing day, and his work, once a distant concern, now seemed to offer a sense of purpose again. Elena had stayed by his side throughout the recovery process, never leaving him for a moment, always present, always loving. It was a love that had withstood the storm, a love that had saved him, and Michael was more grateful than words could express. They had been through so much together: pain, sacrifice, fear, and ultimately healing. But as Michael walked into his office that morning, the weight of his gratitude and the calm of his recovery were about to be shattered in the most cruel and unexpected way. Sam, the office boy who had worked in the building for years, approached Michael with an unusual look in his eyes. His demeanor was stiff, his expression somber. Michael, too focused on the tasks ahead, barely took notice of him until Sam hesitated, then spoke in a low, almost nervous voice. "Mr. Michael, I need to tell you something," Sam said, his voice wavering with uncertainty. "I didn't want to say anything, but I think you need to know the truth." Michael's brow furrowed, a feeling of unease rising in his chest. "What is it, Sam? What's going on?" Sam's eyes flickered with discomfort, but he didn't back down. He took a deep breath and whispered the words that would break Michael's heart. "Elena. She spent the night with Mr. Tom at the hotel after you were in the hospital." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. His body froze, and for a long moment he couldn't process what he had just heard. The noise of the office, the clicking of keyboards, the hum of phones, everything faded into a distant blur. His vision clouded, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Elena, his Elena, had betrayed him. He felt as though the ground had been ripped from beneath him. His mind raced, memories of their love flashing through his thoughts, memories of everything she had done for him. How could this be true? How could she, the woman who had given up so much for him, the woman who had fought so hard for his life, betray him in such a way? His chest tightened with a sharp pain that felt unbearable. Sam, seeing Michael's reaction, quickly lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry, Mr. Michael, I didn't want to say anything, but I thought you should know." Before Sam could say another word, Michael turned away from him, the room spinning around him. His heart was pounding, the blood rushing in his ears as he made his way out of the office. He didn't know where he was going or what he was going to do, but he had to see Elena. He had to confront her. The confusion, the betrayal, it was overwhelming him. When he arrived at home, the door slammed open with a force that made Elena look up from the kitchen, her hands frozen mid-motion as she saw the storm in Michael's eyes. He stood there for a moment, his chest heaving, his body trembling with raw emotion. "Elena!" he shouted, his voice raw with pain. "Tell me it isn't true. Tell me you didn't spend the night with Tom." Elena's face went pale. She knew the truth had finally caught up with her, but she wasn't prepared for the devastation in Michael's eyes. She had never seen him like this before. She opened her mouth to explain, to tell him the truth, to make him understand the lengths she had gone to for him, but the words caught in her throat. "Michael, please listen to me," she began, stepping toward him, but he held up a hand, silencing her. "I don't want to hear it." His voice cracked, filled with anguish. "I trusted you. I loved you with everything I had. I thought you were my person, Elena. I thought we were beyond everything, beyond the pain, beyond the world that tried to tear us apart. And now I find out that you were with him? After everything I've been through? After everything we've been through?" Elena's heart shattered at his words. She had never wanted to hurt him. She had never wanted to betray his trust. But she had agreed to Tom's terms in a desperate attempt to save Michael's life. She had thought that in the end it wouldn't matter, because her love for Michael was pure, and she had never intended for anything to happen with Tom. But now it didn't matter. The damage was done. "Michael, I did it for you," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "I did it to save your life. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be with him. But Tom was the only one who could help. I couldn't let you die. I love you, Michael. You were dying, and I would have done anything to save you." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she spoke, but Michael, consumed by his pain and disbelief, turned away from her. He couldn't look at her right now. It was too much. He couldn't fathom the depth of the betrayal. "So that's it?" Michael said bitterly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You used me to get what you needed. You didn't even care about the consequences of your actions, did you?" "No, Michael, that's not it at all," Elena cried, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this. You have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you." But Michael shook his head, the anger and betrayal rising in his chest like a wave. "I can't believe anything you say right now, Elena. Not after this. Not after what you did." As the words left his lips, he felt the weight of them crush his heart. He never wanted to say this, but it felt as though the love between them had been tainted, irrevocably stained. He couldn't bear the thought of living with this pain. Without another word, Michael turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. Elena stood frozen in place, her body shaking with the force of her sobs. The weight of her decisions, the consequences of her actions, pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket. She had done it all for love, her love for Michael, but now it seemed as though that love had been lost forever. The man she had sacrificed everything for, the man who had once been her world, now saw her as a stranger, as someone who had betrayed him. Michael's heart is torn apart by the revelation, and Eleanor is crushed under the weight of his disbelief and anger. The love they once shared is now clouded with doubt and pain, and Eleanor is left to wonder if she will ever be able to repair the damage she's caused. It was late in the afternoon when Michael returned to his office, the weight of the world still pressing down on him. His mind was a storm of emotions, but most of all it was filled with regret. He couldn't stop replaying the confrontation with Elena in his mind, her pleading, her desperate eyes filled with pain as she tried to explain herself. But he couldn't hear her. His heart had been shattered, and all he could think about was how deeply betrayed he felt. He thought she had crossed a line that could never be erased. The office was quiet, but Michael wasn't alone for long. As he walked toward his desk, he heard a voice behind him, a familiar voice that stopped him dead in his tracks. "Michael, I need to talk to you. Please, just hear me out." It was Tom, Michael's friend, the very same man who had been there for him through thick and thin, the man whose kidney had saved his life, the man who, in his mind, had played a role in shattering his world. Michael turned, his eyes filled with an intense mixture of anger and confusion. "What do you want, Tom?" Michael's voice was cold, distant. He didn't want to hear any more lies, any more excuses. But Tom's face was not one of guilt, but of something deeper, remorse. "I need to tell you the truth," Tom said, his voice soft and hesitant. "The whole truth about what happened with Elena." Michael felt his chest tighten, a familiar ache spreading through him. The thought of Elena, of how she had betrayed him, was too much to bear, but Tom's voice carried an urgency that made him pause. He was confused. Did Tom have some explanation for Elena's actions? "What's this all about, Tom?" Michael asked, his voice a mixture of exhaustion and anger. Tom stepped forward, his eyes filled with regret. He looked like a man carrying the weight of a secret, a burden so heavy it had nearly crushed him. He took a deep breath before speaking again, his words coming out in a rush. "Michael, I'm sorry," Tom began, his voice trembling. "I've been carrying this guilt, and I can't keep it to myself any longer. I need you to understand. Elena never cheated on you. She never wanted to do what I made her do. I blackmailed her into spending that night with me." Michael froze, his mind struggling to process what Tom had just said. "What? You blackmailed her?" Tom nodded, looking down in shame. "Yes, I'm ashamed of it. I used your situation, your need for a kidney, as leverage. I told her I would donate my kidney to you, but only if she spent the night with me. I was selfish, Michael. I used your love for her to manipulate her. I didn't care about her feelings. I only cared about getting what I wanted. But the truth is, she never betrayed you. She was only doing it to save your life." Tom's words echoed in Michael's mind, each sentence hammering away at his heart. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. His mind raced with confusion, anger, and regret. All this time, he had thought Elena had betrayed him. He had hurt her, yelled at her, turned away from her without even understanding what had truly happened. And now, here was Tom, confessing the truth, a truth that shattered the world Michael had built around his anger and grief. The room seemed to close in on him as the realization hit him like a tidal wave. His heart ached, each beat feeling like it was tearing him apart. He had trusted Tom. He had considered him a friend. But now, he felt like a fool. "How could you do that, Tom?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper, thick with disbelief. "You knew how much I loved her. You knew what she meant to me, and you used that to hurt her?" Tom's face twisted with guilt. "I was wrong, Michael. I can't undo what I've done. I hurt both of you, and I am deeply sorry. I never should have used you both like that. I never should have put Elena in that position. She is a good woman. She didn't deserve this." Michael's fists clenched, his entire body trembling with the intensity of his emotions. He felt betrayed not only by Eleanor, but by Tom as well. The two people he had trusted the most had both hurt him in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. His chest ached with the weight of the pain he had caused Elena by believing the worst about her. "I can't believe I ever doubted her," Michael muttered, his voice breaking as his eyes welled with tears. "I thought she didn't love me anymore. I thought she was willing to betray everything we had. And it was all because of you." Tom lowered his head, ashamed of the pain he had caused. "I know, Michael, I'm sorry. I wish I could take it all back, but I can't. All I can do now is tell you the truth and hope that somehow you can forgive me." Michael stood there, speechless, his heart heavy with guilt and regret. The pain of believing Elena had betrayed him was overwhelming. He had made decisions, said things, and hurt her in ways that could never be undone. And now he had to face the reality of how deeply he had wounded the woman he loved because he had been too quick to believe the worst without hearing her side. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, Michael spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to see her. I need to apologize. I need to make things right. I can't live with the thought that I hurt her like this." Tom nodded, his eyes filled with sympathy and understanding. "She's at home, Michael. She's waiting for you. Please, go to her. She loves you more than anything." With those words, Michael's world shifted. Everything he thought he knew was upended, and he was left standing in the ashes of his own misunderstanding. His mind screamed at him to go to Elena, to make things right, to beg for her forgiveness. But a part of him was paralyzed with the fear that she wouldn't forgive him, that he had already lost her. But the truth had been unveiled, and now Michael knew the one thing that mattered most. Elena's love for him had never wavered. The love that had saved him, the love that had endured so much, was still there. And no matter the pain, no matter the mistakes, that love was worth fighting for. Michael feels like a fool, consumed by the regret of believing the worst about Elena. His heart aches with the weight of his misunderstanding, realizing how deeply he hurt her. The truth brings a bitter sense of relief, but the damage he's caused is immeasurable. Now, the path forward is uncertain, but Michael knows he has to make amends and fight for the love he nearly lost. The drive to Elena's apartment felt like an eternity to Michael. Every minute was filled with a heavy weight on his chest as the guilt of what he had done gnawed at him. The pain of what he had believed, what he had done, was almost unbearable. He couldn't undo the accusations, the hurtful words, the looks of disbelief in Elena's eyes when he'd pushed her away. His heart had shattered at the thought of her betrayal, and now, standing on the edge of that painful truth, he was left to pick up the pieces. The car slowed as it approached the building, but time seemed to stand still. Michael's hands were clammy on the steering wheel, his mind racing. The image of Elena's face, the woman he loved more than anything in the world, flooded his thoughts. How could he have been so blind, so quick to doubt her? How could he have believed Tom's lies instead of trusting the woman who had stood by him, who had sacrificed so much for him? He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. There was no going back, no reversing the damage he had done. All he could do now was beg for her forgiveness, if she would even give him the chance. When he reached the door, his hand trembled as he knocked. Every second felt like a small eternity, and when the door opened, Michael was met with a sight that sent his heart spiraling. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale from the sleepless nights. She had always been a vision of strength, but now she looked broken, like the woman he had once known was fading away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Michael just stood there, feeling like a stranger in his own home, unable to find the words to express the depth of his remorse. The sight of her, his Elena, looking at him with such a mixture of pain and weariness, nearly tore him apart. "I was wrong," Michael finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I should have trusted you. I should have never doubted you, not for a second. You were always there for me, and I was too blind to see it." Elena's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped back, closing the door behind her as she let him in. She didn't speak at first. She couldn't. The words felt stuck in her throat, caught between the pain of betrayal and the love she still felt for him. She had fought for him, sacrificed everything for him, and yet when it had mattered most, Michael had turned away. But as the silence stretched between them, Elena's heart ached with a truth she couldn't deny. She loved him. She had always loved him. She would always love him, despite everything. I don't know what to say, Michael." Elena's voice was barely audible, filled with the weight of the hurt she had been carrying. "You hurt me. You made me feel like I was nothing, like everything I did for you didn't matter." Michael's heart broke at the sound of her words. He took a step toward her, his hands trembling as he reached out, but Elena pulled away, her face a mixture of sorrow and strength. The pain in her eyes pierced him like 1,000 knives, and it took everything he had not to collapse in front of her. I know I hurt you," Michael replied, his voice raw, "and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Please, Elena, I'm begging you, please forgive me. I love you more than anything. I've always loved you. You were right. You were right. And I was wrong. I was too afraid, too stupid to see it." Elena's tears fell silently as she stood there, her heart torn between the love she felt for him and the betrayal she had experienced. The pain of his disbelief, of his accusation, still lingered in her chest. But in this moment, standing before him, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time: genuine remorse. It wasn't just about the words he was saying. It was the way he was saying them, the way his eyes were pleading with her, the way he was broken too. For a moment, Elena remained silent, staring at him with a mixture of sadness and longing. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him again, but the hurt she had endured weighed heavily on her heart. "Do you know what it felt like, Michael?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it felt like to give up everything for you, to sacrifice my own dignity to save your life? And then have you turn around and accuse me of cheating? To think I would betray you when all I ever wanted was to help you?" The pain in her voice cracked Michael open. He couldn't speak. He was choking on the regret and guilt that he had buried so deep. He had destroyed her trust, and he had never realized how much he was asking her to forgive. His eyes filled with tears, and he stepped closer to her again. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said, his voice breaking. "I was just scared of losing you, scared of being alone. And in my fear I hurt you. But I swear, Elena, I swear I never meant to break you. Please, please forgive me." A long silence passed between them, but Michael could feel Elena's heart softening. She had always believed in the power of their love, and despite everything, that love was still there, still waiting to be rekindled. Finally, Elena took a deep breath, her shoulders sagging with the weight of her decision. She looked up at Michael, her tears still flowing, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes. "I forgive you," she whispered. "I forgive you because I love you. But know this, Michael, love isn't just about the big gestures. It's about trust. It's about believing in each other, no matter the circumstances. It's about standing by each other, even when it's hard." Michael nodded, tears streaming down his face as he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "I'll spend my life proving that I trust you. I'll spend my life showing you that I believe in us. I love you, Elena, more than you'll ever know." And in that moment, in the quiet of the apartment, their love began to heal. The pain didn't disappear instantly, but the bond between them was restored, stronger, deeper, and more unbreakable than before. They had faced their demons, and together they had emerged from the darkness, ready to rebuild their future with a love that would never again be shaken. The reunion is a powerful mix of raw emotion and healing. Michael's sorrow is palpable as he begs for Elena's forgiveness, while Elena's heart, though scarred, opens up again, willing to forgive because of the love she still carries. The pain of betrayal lingers, but the love between them is restored, deeper, more resilient, and filled with the promise of a fresh start. As the days passed and the weight of the past began to slowly lift, Michael and Elena found themselves in a place neither of them had ever imagined they'd be, together, but forever changed. The scars of betrayal, of doubt, and of the pain they had inflicted on each other were still there, but so was the understanding that those scars were not signs of weakness. They were the marks of a love that had been tested, that had endured fire, and that had emerged from it with a deeper, more powerful connection than they had ever known. They had both fought battles. Michael battling his fear, his pride, and his overwhelming guilt. Eleanor fighting against the accusations, the hurt, and the unbearable choices she had made for the sake of their love. But in the end, they had emerged from the storm, and now, as they stood together, side by side, they could feel the quiet peace that had settled between them, a peace earned through tears, sacrifice, and hard-earned forgiveness. There were moments when the wounds reopened, when the pain of the past would come rushing back. Michael would catch a flicker of doubt in Elena's eyes, or Elena would feel the weight of the words she had spoken in her moments of hurt, and the vulnerability of those memories would surge. But they were no longer broken. They were healing. Each day they found new ways to show their love. Michael, more attentive than ever, would surprise Elena with small gestures, an unexpected bouquet of flowers, a handwritten note that reminded her how much she meant to him. He would hold her close at night, not just as a lover but as a protector, a man who had learned the true meaning of trust and loyalty. Elena, for her part, poured her heart into him as she always had. Her love, though bruised, had never been weaker. She found ways to support him, to reassure him that their journey wasn't over, that they had weathered the storm together and come out stronger. One evening, as they sat together in the dim light of their living room, their hands entwined, Michael spoke softly, his voice filled with sincerity. "You know, Eleanor," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I've never truly understood what love meant, not until I almost lost you. And now I realize how lucky I am, not just because you saved my life, but because you never gave up on us, even when I gave you every reason to walk away." Elena squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with affection for him. "And I never will. I promised you once, Michael. I promised that I would love you through anything, and I meant it. No matter how dark the road gets, as long as we have each other, we'll find our way." Michael leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. "I don't deserve you, but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make sure you know how much you mean to me. You're my everything, Elena. I was a fool to ever doubt you." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes as she smiled softly. "We've both been fools, but we're learning. We're learning to love each other the way we should have from the beginning, not with pride or fear, but with all of who we are, with everything we've got." They held each other, neither of them needing words anymore. Their love was no longer fragile. It had been tempered by their trials, made stronger by their mutual understanding. They had both given something of themselves, sacrificed pieces of their pride, and in return, they had built something unbreakable. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't without pain, but it was theirs, and it was enough. In the weeks that followed, they began to heal in ways neither of them had anticipated. Elena took time to rediscover herself, to remember who she was beyond the wife, beyond the caretaker. Michael encouraged her every step of the way, supporting her as she reclaimed parts of her identity she had put on hold. Together, they learned to laugh again, to find joy in the small things. They traveled together, rekindling the spark that had first brought them together, cherishing the simplicity of quiet moments and shared memories. There was an unspoken bond between them now, a deep and unshakable understanding that they were stronger together than apart. They had crossed the most difficult bridge of their lives, the one that had almost torn them apart, and had emerged not just unbroken, but as one, more united than ever before. One evening, as they stood on their balcony, looking out at the city lights below, Michael turned to Elena, his voice filled with emotion. "We've been through hell, haven't we?" Elena nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But we're here now, aren't we?" "Yeah, we are," Michael said, pulling her close. "And no matter what comes our way in the future, I'll face it with you, together, always." Elena smiled, resting her head on his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "Always," she whispered, knowing deep in her soul that no matter what challenges they faced, they would face them as one, and no matter how much the world tried to tear them apart, their love would remain unbreakable. Their journey had been painful, but it had also been a journey of redemption, of understanding, and of love's incredible power to heal. And now, with every step they took forward, they knew that their love wasn't just something they had. It was something they had built. And nothing, not even the darkest storm, could ever take it away. Elena and Michael's love, once fragile, is now a symbol of resilience and redemption. Their shared pain and sacrifice have transformed their bond into something unbreakable. With every challenge they've faced, their love has only grown stronger, and as they continue their journey together, they realize that their love is not just about surviving the storm. It's about dancing in the rain, together, forever.